so many things give us resiliency, and we'd be wise if we wisened ourselves up to, finding ways, being smart enough to figure out what might help us to have that resiliency against the weaknesses that we might know we have.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, epigenetic human performance coach. This is where we discuss all things lifestyle, environment, food, exercise, work, mind, and social interaction as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone. So if you're ready to start viewing you as an individual, take control of your life and health, and get results, buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, and here's the place where we talk about everything lifestyle and environment and how it relates to our genetic expression. I have a fun one today. Buckle up. I've got with me Dr. Howard Walsdorf, also known as Dr. W, and he is here to talk about living our modern life and something called the 4 elements. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. W here. Dr. Walsdorf is a veteran holistic chiropractic and natural healer, author, speaker, and expert in the ancient wisdom of the 4 elements in natural living. His latest book is Fire, Air, Water, and Earth. Apply ancient wisdom to your life and your families too. He aims to revitalize modern society by introducing a compelling new holistic paradigm for healthier living and healing, integrating the principles embodied by the 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. As a founder of the 4 Element Institute and visionary behind Growing Holistically Community, Dr. W is on a mission to inspire and educate people to think, live, and heal in more natural ways. So when I found out about Dr. W, as you can tell, knowing me, this is why I had to reach out and go, come on here. You're barking up my tree, Dr. W. So,
Good to hear.
welcome to the program. It's a pleasure
Thank
to
you,
have
Susan. Happy to be here. You and your
fellow Northeasterner as well. So let's start off. Tell us a bit about your story. What brought you to where you are? Because none of us doing this has had nothing happen in the background, right, of a personal story. There's always something that leads us to where we are doing this kind of practicing. So fill us in, if you would.
Okay. For me, I define myself in terms of my focus on this 4 element ancient knowledge: fire, air, water, and earth. And so I'm going to take that question to what got me involved in focusing my life in that way. And I haven't had major health issues. I've always been a nature boy. My mom would say, you walk to a different beat of a different drummer. So I've always been an outlier in that manner. And I went to a natural science school back in my undergrad days and learned about nature and all that kind of thing. And I took a non-credit course in astrology. And astrology talks about the 4 elements. So that's how most people know that they're a fire or water sign, however you might be defined. So that being into nature, that kind of took hold in me, this concept of the 4 elements. And so I also took a yoga class when I was an undergrad. I was into all these interesting things back in the day, and I still am, and 40 years later. And in yoga, and Kundalini yoga in particular, it's pretty body oriented and seeing the body as this having a spiritual dimension to it, of the body. I do believe the body, I think everybody wants to believe the body has something significant about it. And it doesn't have to be phrased in spiritual, but but at the same time, I'm a scientist, and everything has to have a physicality, a materiality, or if it's just what I call spiritual mumbo jumbo. So I believe in science finding places in the here and now where we see higher level things happening. So that's the way I define my perspective. And so I've had my health issues along the way, not major ones, but I've applied this kind of what I call this ancient knowledge, this ancient wisdom for myself. Growing up, I had my issues. I was pigeon-toed. I had other little things, but nothing major. But the body was a focus of mine. So I did have a focus on the physical body. And I became a chiropractor, partly because of that, and partly because with the yoga focused me on the physical body. And I wanted to go further beyond just nature as the embodiment of these spiritual forces or elements, if you will, to seeing the body in that manner. So I went to chiropractic college thinking I was going to get insights and revelations from these professors, but alas, I did not. And I remember one professor being asked by another student, "Can you put it all together for us, make it more holistic or whatever you want to call it?" And they couldn't do it. And they said, "It's up to you guys to do it yourselves." And I remember thinking to myself, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out." And I think I have, if I may be bold. And I figured it out that, and let me add this, is I took some courses in acupuncture as well. And they have the 5 elements of acupuncture. So they don't have the 4 elements. People don't realize, most people today don't realize that Western science, Western philosophy, Western medicine all began with the 4 elements. People don't know that the 4 elements are the foundation of Western civilization. I bet you didn't even know that, Susan.
You know what? I didn't. I was just sitting here going,
No, and it surprises me, to be frank with you, how foolish, not foolish, but how sad it is, because the four elements are Hippocrates, the father of medicine. You might have heard of him. He was clearly a 4-element physician. Aristotle was who's the foundation of Western science and philosophy. Couldn't have been more 4-element focused. So
wow.
4 elements are so foundational to Western civilization. And admittedly, they took some wrong turns. They got into the 4 humors, which might have not been the right thing to do. But then they had also leeches and bloodletting that ended up for the 4-element trajectory. But that said, there are a lot of other positive parts of the 4-element paradigm, and I'm here to bring that aspect back.
Love it.
So the 4 elements, and just so you understand, a lot of people don't know what the 4 elements really are. They're nature's sun, air, water, and earth. And what I like to define them as are 4 principles that trust these foundational, cardinal foursome that are life positive for us. Whether we know it or not, we are drawing them into us. We all like the sunshine of the fire element of the sun. We all need water, and we all need the terra firma of earth underneath our feet. We all know we should breathe well, the air element. So we all know these things are primal, cardinal, and important, but we don't realize just quite how important they are. And I'm on a mission. I've raised my hand to this lineage, this ancient lineage that no one really much is talking about. So to me, it's a great honor, a privilege, and at the same time, it's not an easy. I've been told it's a heavy lift in today's world, in today's high-tech world where we don't really know any of these things today. I'm here in any form I can get involved in to bring this knowledge, this ancient knowledge forward. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's best I can do.
Yeah, that's your journey. I love it. That's what brought you here. So yes, you absolutely answered the question with flying colors. So you just touched on it about the tech-driven world. And this was one of the things I wanted to talk with you about: 4 elements and modern life, balancing nature's element in a tech-driven world. Everything is tech. Like I said to you before we started here, tech gives us the benefit of us being able to have this conversation and have it available for anybody in the world to listen to. That's amazing. But tech has also made us disconnect from each other. It's made us, even though it could bring us closer by being able to connect more, sometimes we're too connected. But I think it's also made us disconnect from ourselves and our bodies, because we're so into all the tech now. We can use tech in a good way.
Absolutely.
Which is, I use an AI-based platform. One of the things I use looks at how you're formed in the womb and predominant hormones that drive you. Things like embryology, chronobiology, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedics are some of the sciences that go into the algorithm. And so that's a beautiful thing to have tech available to utilize it for health. But boy, it's made society lazy as hell.
I sometimes say it's kind of stupefied us. I hate to say it that way, but we've been
It's
stupefied.
true.
We've in another trajectory. I'll start talking about how we've become soft,
Yep.
and that's because we don't have enough that hard earth principle that certifies us. I like to say. So that's what these principles do. That they have a life positive, physiological, and mental, spiritual way that they play with us or the way they engage us. Yes, what I oftentimes like with what you're saying, Susan, sometimes I'll bring this concept up is that what makes humankind unique on this planet is that every generation of humankind is generally a little bit more modern than the one that came before it. That's part of what we are as humans, whereas all other creatures, by and large, they're constantly living the same way that their predecessors did. And I like to call this difference, or what's going on here is this what makes humankind different is we have what's called the modern pole and the primitive pole. We're stuck in that situation whether we know it or not. There's the primitive pole is what came, the ancient nature basically is the primitive pole, and technology is the modern pole, as I see it. And there's always been this balancing act between the modern and the primitive poles of the human condition. But what I suggest to realize is that gulf between the primitive and the modern has grown so wide, so fast, exponentially fast. And that's driving, I believe, a lot of the stress, the imbalance, a lot of the negativity of our life is because this unacknowledged divergence or gulf between the modern and the primitive. Now, here's what I like to add to the mix is that nature being the primitive pole, I believe, what's at the core, we all need a little bit of that primitive pole, natural energetics. But what I believe is important is that at the core of this primitive pole of nature are these four elements. They, in my system of thinking, and I might try to bring the origin of the four elements into view to help you understand why I think that they are at the core of nature. But the core of nature locked in these four cardinal principles. They're at the core of nature. And if we want to understand what we need to create the balance, so it's a balanced, primitive locking in these four elemental principles, we would do well to understand what are these four elements and how to engage them in a way to bring us balance. We don't have to go back into primitive pole by and large. We just need these concepts, these things to do, ways of living that come out of that primitive pole awareness. You understand what I'm saying, Susan?
Absolutely. I'm eating it up, Dr. W.
Okay.
It's in here. This is my bread. This is my after breakfast snack. I'm just eating this up. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm resonating with all this. You think about nature therapy.
Yeah.
Best thing. It just feeds you. It feeds the mind, the body, the soul. But what do most people do? Remember, because I think we're probably close to the same age. We went out and we played until dark, and we were outside soaking everything in. And think about how full. I'm so glad that we grew up in the generation that we grew up in,
right?
Because we had the benefit of all of that. Now it's become these little kids have technology at the age of 2. Most of them are more technologically proficient than I am too. But they start with this. Right, sit them in front of the TV. We were lucky if we got TV. It was like at breakfast time with your cartoons and then with the family at night. But now it's all just let's let them Netflix binge, whatever. Tech instead of go outside and play.
And it's very enticing. We're unfortunately, I think the creator screwed up a little bit there that made it too enticing for this stimulation. We're very wired. What drives modernity, the modern pole, is the desire for newness and I don't know if I want to call it entertain, but new technology. And young people are always going to be dazzled by the the new technologies and the things that are getting their attention. So, in some four-element perspective, think of all those screens as the fire element. Too much of this fiery, quick energy, and almost like sugar. I devised a little bit that I call four-element nutrition. And in a way, sugar can be thought of as the fire element. It's that quick energy. Plants take that sunlight and turn it into glucose. That's the fire element's biochemistry. The earth element, biochemically speaking, I won't get too involved, is protein. But the point would be here is that screen time and all that fiery energy is just too much for our nervous system. If I can just throw this in, as a chiropractor, I work with trying to understand how these elements express themselves in the body. So obviously, the bones of the body would be the earth element. I don't know if you can understand that, but hopefully,
Yep.
Bones, solid, da da da. Whereas the fire element
Grounding
is the nervous system and our brains and light, all that kind of stuff. So there's this imbalance that our nervous system is being bombarded by all these fiery screens, and it makes. I see. I'm in the university community here at Syracuse, and a lot of young people. I've been here for 40 years now. I've seen this latest crop of students more anxious than even the ones 5 or 10 years ago. It's really become epidemic, and it's from a variety of different reasons. Part of it is what we're talking about right now. Most of it is that way. And then they end up reinforcing with postural things, that they're bending forward, their head posture. So much that's happening. And I'm on a mission to engage these young people, to find ways of helping them. And they're looking for someone like myself, and it's a privilege to engage them in this manner. But getting to your point, things are out of control with all this high-tech screen time. And that when we were younger, we were outside. For me, I always liked to be in the woods, so we called it the woods. And it was a whole different environment. Not that we didn't watch TV, but we were outside quite a lot more than we are today.
There's a lot more interaction.
Yeah.
If you got to spend time on the phone, you got to spend time on the phone. But everything was more just the in-person interaction. Everything was completely different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just, and I see it also when I was a police officer for 10 and a half years, I worked public housing. And those kids that were in there were 2 family projects. So a lot of little kids in there. And it just showed me these kids, the childhood that we had. And I'm so grateful to have had that childhood.
Yes.
They don't have childhoods like we had. They're taking on, the kids are parenting parents a lot of the time.
But even beyond that, we've all become denatured. I like to use the phrase denatured. And we aren't even living in environments that are conducive. A lot of us are. But in an inner city, there's parks, there's green spaces, but I don't think they're quite emphasized. I don't think it's part of people's gestalt these days. Young people, they talk about walking outside, but they have their ear pods on. They're oftentimes in city environments, which are not necessarily so natural.
Yeah.
But I just think there's a thirst for it. There's an idealism. I have a 33-year-old son, and he has an ideal of getting outside, but he likes his screen time and his games, and it's just a hard thing for them to find reasons to engage the outside, and it's part of the task of myself is to make nature more important in people's lives, make it more engaging, and to help them even to see the foods. I'm embarrassed to say he has a terrible diet. I tried my best, Susan. But
you can only lead the horse to the water, Dr.
Yeah. And of course, Dad, he rolls his eyes when I try to tell him something. But the point is, I believe by making nature and the foods that come out of nature seen as the embodiment of something, for lack of a better word, I use spiritual. I do see things in a kind of a spiritual context. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it has to have a scientific manifestation. And that's what, to me, the 4 elements in my research over 40 years, really. I have been researching these 4 elements for 40 years now.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And I'm semi-retired now. I have more time to devote to it, to finish the book and update it and do podcasts like this with you.
Mhm.
I have my own little YouTube channel and blah, blah, blah. So I do what I can to reach out and to engage people with this ancient knowledge and to make them see that these four elements are the expression of something that is, I believe, one of the most important things that we need to know. And I'd like to talk about that maybe eventually with you. What's the, how do they arise, these four elements, and what makes them special, and what insights can we draw from them to live a healthier, more balanced life? And ultimately, they're about balance. The sun, the air, the wood, and earth. What makes nature on this planet as productive as it is because we're these four principles of the cosmos that nature tells us is sun, air, water, and earth. They have found their right balance here, and we're coming close to blowing it with all the climate change things that are entering the picture. But there are these. Nature is as wonderful as it is because it's found a way to balance it on this planet, and we ignore that there's always a balance with each of us within this planet, whatever, but some balances are beautiful, some are dangerously precarious. Right now, we're at this dangerously precarious balance collectively, and I would suggest personally, individuals, many of us have a precarious balance, and that's the stress, the collective stress that we feel is ultimately because we're all precariously balanced. So many of us are precariously balancing it, and we're all affected, I believe, in the collective, sphere of consciousness, unconscious of our collective lives. The it's not just the political turmoil, but there's something vibrating under the surface in a way.
I was going to say energy.
Balance of
Energy.
these principles. So you'll hear me talk about principles, and I don't know if your audience can appreciate when I'm talking about. I oftentimes say there's these four primal principles, forces, energies, and elements. So they're like even values. I like to say that there's these four elements. Fire is the value of spiritual unity. So it's there's an order. I like to say that there's an order to these four elements, and I'm going to go real deeply or quickly into it. Can I do that?
Yeah, I want you to. I want you to keep going.
So there's an order to understand the four elements. I think it's important to understand there's an order to them. And I like to say, think of someone from Boston, how they might say four, the four elements. So fire, air, water, and the E of four, earth is silent. The sun is up top, fire, right?
Okay.
Earth is firm underneath our feet, and air is lighter than water. It's as simple as that. So these four principles that nature embodies have an order, and that there's like I was suggesting, there's a way that they manifest in our body as earth being the bones, the nervous system being the fire.
Mm-hmm.
You think fire, the nervous system, as the more sophisticated, ethereal, less, least solid. And so you have the four states of matter, just to give it another. So these foursomes show up all over. There's the four states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and then you have the plasma state of stars and the sun, for example. You know, the four forces of physics, gravity and light are two of them. So there's these foursomes. Somehow, foursomes, and there's the four sort of the genetic code, as you know. You have four bases of genetics. So much is built upon this foursome that I believe are expressive of these four cardinal principles. I'm going to go with you right now to tell you what they are. Okay.
Okay. Do it.
So think of numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we start with the one of fire. And so what fire is the nervous system. It's the principle of unity, oneness, our soul, our personal spirit. And in Polism, we talk about repeating patterns. So the way holism works is if it related to a holographic film plate. If I took a holographic film plate of you, I would shoot a laser at you in a special way, and I'd have the film plate, and we got an embedded image of you, and we sliced it into 50 pieces, and I took number 33 of that picture and put a laser back in it. We wouldn't just see a little fragment of you, we'd see the whole you. So that's how holism looks at things, holography as well, is that every piece of the whole has the same pattern. If you look at that little chart of film plate, you see squiggly little lines. And that somehow the pattern of those squiggly lines represents the whole. And the whole has the same squiggly line pattern. The point I'm making is that four elements, these four principles, are embedded on every level of the cosmos, including nature and our human condition. So in our bodies, it's the bones, the blood, the muscles, as it turns out, and our nervous system. And I'm just going to go a little quicker into what these principles are and why they manifest as the blood and the muscles and the like. And
Yeah.
that fire principle, think of it as the principle of oneness. Like I said, it's spirituality. And think of what the principle of one is all, and what spirituality is in a lot of ways, is about the oneness, understanding, appreciating, and living your life in the sense that there's a higher oneness. We're all there's a oneness to ourselves. There's a transcendent oneness that we're part of. And I suggest that's what spirituality is really about, is living with that concept and doing your best to be part of something larger. So that's the principle of oneness. Principle of two-ness, if you will, is seeing the geometry of circle represents the oneness. It's all-inclusive. It's traditionally used as symbol of oneness. So what I do is I use in the book, in papers I've written, I use geometry, and the geometry of two is a line. Think of a line with those not a line segment, but a line with those two arrows going in opposite directions. That's what lines really represent. It's the geometry of two is a line. And so one end goes to the biggest big and one to the smallest small. All those yin yang opposites were created when the creator said, let there be two, if you will, as it was trying to create this physical world. Right? So it's really a creation story. That's what the four elements are really all about. It's really the unfolding of creation. So I think just to appreciate the scope of how important these are, I think it is useful to see that they embody these principles. You still with me, Susan?
I'm still with you.
Okay.
I'm still with you.
It's a little metaphysical, but I think people need a little spiritual, intellectual metaphysics to shake them up a little bit. So we tend to think of opposites as attracting, but the realm of two-ness, Susan, what are they doing? They're going in opposite directions. They're not.
Yes.
Creation is going to get nowhere if there's not a way to resolve these to the biggest big and the smallest small, the most spiritual and most material. All those opposites were created with two-ness. The next number after two is three. And what three comes is big and small come together and they create medium, moderate, all those middle of the road type of things. What I like to say is that an important polarity is the spiritual and material poles of the cosmos. And I like to say this is that nature's physical, but a lot of people like ourselves perhaps see nature having a spiritual glow to it. And I suggest it's really there. What nature is spirit and matter of that two-ness realm coming together, and that's what nature is, bringing together the spiritual and the material. Now in holism,
so it's pulling one and two together.
You could say that, or it's just, however you want to phrase it. Yeah, it's pulling one and two together. So you get nature, you get medium. Now in holism, we talk about body, mind, and spirit, right? You've heard of that body, mind, spirit triad, right? You see how body and spirit are two poles of our human condition. What I think is cool here is what mind is, what we each are from a three-element mind state, is that unique way that we are bridging or connecting the spiritual and material poles of our own life. But not only that, Susan, it's all the opposites of our life get brought together, balanced by who we are. So who we are is basically defined by how we balance the opposites, including the modern and the primitive. That's part of what I was talking about earlier. So who you are is really defined by how we create balance between opposite poles. What I like to say is nature, which is that threeness, right? Moderate or middle, moderate, mind, nature, are metaphysical abstractions. We haven't reached the creator didn't quite reach dense physicality yet. We're not there yet. Physical presence. We're in this metaphysical state. So the number 4 had to come along, I suggest.
Okay.
To get initiated into this way of thinking, I'd like to draw a circle of oneness. That's symbolic, circle of one. What kind of goes like this? It fractures that one into the 4 parts. And the magic here is the 90-degree angle. It's that right angle, the right angle, Susan, that somehow nature, which was metaphysical in its abstraction of 3, now becomes physical. And you get these 4 elements of nature: fire, air, water, earth, the sun, the air, the water, and earth. And those 4 elements of nature embody these 4 cosmic spanning metaphysical principles.
Okay.
Did I get you there?
No. Yeah, I'm still with you. I'm still with you. This is what brings everything together. All the other ones. This is where the culmination.
Where it reaches physicality.
Yep. Yeah. Where everything before
Completion.
that is the spiritual, the mind, the elements, and now we're here.
We're here. We have bones. So let me just add this, just to follow through here. So our nervous system is the fire principle. All those we have an idea, and it lights up in our brain, that fire element. So in a way, creating ideas is the embodiment of fire within us. Then we have, and that's what I call the whatness of the 4 elements. Have a what, how, why, and where, as it turns out.
Okay, that's the
another
what.
story.
Okay.
But what I really wanted to go with here, Susan, is how fire is the sun, and what's really cool and scientific, and I believe this is poetic, scientific, it's spiritual, and it's very practical, this formative way of thinking. Let me just give you a scientific perspective here. Is what science has told us is that what really shines out from the sun is this oneness energy that comes as 4 hydrogens fused together, create 1 helium. And in the process, light is created. So the sun is really emitting this oneness energy as 4 hydrogens fused together to create 1 helium, obviously trillions of times per nanosecond. But what I really want to go is further than that, is what fills up this, or I suggest is between those 2 arrows of a line, what's created is space. That's the air element, is actually space. You see what I'm saying? Between those arrows are space. What moves us through space in the human condition in life are muscles. That's the key point I want to make here. Is muscles are the embodiment of the air element within us. Our breathing, which draws air into us, involves that's a primal muscle action. That's why breathing is so important in my way of thinking. And even with epigenetics, I would imagine somewhere the way you do things affect the genetic expression. And I do believe,
absolutely.
And I do believe that epigenetics are influenced by how we engage these principles. So let me just go a little further, and then I'll go further in a different direction that you might want to lead me. But so air is the spaciousness, the muscles of the body that we have to use to move us through space. It's think of if that space between you and somebody else was cut in half, you would have less elbow room. Air is what gives us elbow room, self-empowerment. That's all part of that air element. Everything needs its space, its elbow room, that muscular robustness. That's what qi is, I believe, in Chinese medicine. I believe that qi is basically the elbow room, that whether you're a liver cell or an individual person or an organ, everything needs its elbow room. And when you don't have that elbow room, that air element, things start collapsing in. So that's the air element, the robustness that muscles give. The water element obviously would be your blood. But it's not just your blood, it's everything that feeds into your blood, which include foods. So foods are obviously a big part of the water element. And our visceral organs that take that food, digest it,
break it
our
down.
liver makes it functional, it cleans it, detoxifies it, it organizes it. So the water element is the food we eat, it's the visceral organs that deal with all the blood. And earth are the bones of the body that give physical structure to us. And I do want to add this because I think I want to suggest that I believe epigenetics is being affected by the way we engage Earth. And I want to talk a little bit about that if I could, is
Please.
walking. So can you see how walking has a lot of earth energy to it? You're engaging the solid ground. Now, any activity that's a good activity has all four of these principles in it. So walking is important. We use our muscles, we use our sense organs of that fire element of seeing and whatever. We need the blood sugar of nutrition and all that kind of stuff of water. But those heels are striking. Or actually, what I want to get to is in the holistic paradigm, this pattern keeps repeating. So you saw how the bones of the body are the earth element. You see that within all our bones, the feet might have more of that earth element. It's at the very bottom. You know what I'm saying? The feet are. So it embodies that earth element in an even stronger, deeper way. Can you see within the foot, the heel has even more of it? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
So the heel strike of walking,
The strike.
I believe, is very important. And the softening of America and the world, for that matter, I believe, is partly due is as little as we walk today, we put a soft, cushiony, thick sole, oftentimes between our ground and our feet. So I'm a proponent of old-fashioned leather shoes or a thin, sneakery type of material. That makes me an outlier in so many ways, but that's who I am. And
what about the shoes that they have no padding? Some of them even have the toes.
yeah,
Like some of the sneakers.
That's fine. That's good. That's perfect. Things like Crocs, I have patients that come here and I say, don't use them here and there. You'll see all these people, nurses and others who have Crocs. They all have gotten soft and it makes them soft. It makes America soft. I know it's a weird one, but that's Dr. W for you. So so what I like to tell my patients is Earth makes us sturdy. I say, do you want to be sturdy like Earth or you want to be soft? There's a place where we need connective tissue. In a lot of ways, the connective tissue is the water element of our body in the musculoskeletal system, even though I said blood is in our body, but bones of the earth, they're hard. Connective tissues and discs and all that might be water, but the bones need that hardness of engaging the ground. So here's what's interesting. As a woman, you might be aware of this, is that our bones are constantly being remodeled. And one of the strongest things that's one of the most important ways of keeping your bones strong is they tell women, postmenopausal women, to walk. And it stimulates their osteoblasts to produce more bone. But here's the point. It's the heel strike of walking. What it does is it actually, in a scientific way, it compresses the crystalline bone structure underneath at the bottom of your feet, and that stimulates a piezoelectric current, a very small direct current that travels up your bones, and that's what stimulates your osteoblasts to produce more bone. So the poetic way of viewing this, in my opinion, is when the earth within you, i.e. your bones, engage the greater earth below you, this earth energy is translated up your body, and makes the earth within you, i.e. your own bones, stronger. But not just your bones, I believe. I believe it makes you sturdier. I believe these principles, these energetics of these elemental principles, they get translated into the physiology of our bodies. That's my premise here. And when we walk with a little emphasis on that heel strike, it just stimulates that physiological process and makes us sturdier. And as a chiropractor, we know the value of proprioceptive nerves that get stimulated that tell our body where things are. There's 1,000 little proprioceptive nerves per cubic inch. That's how important they are. And they get stimulated by hardness. They don't get stimulated by soft things. They get stimulated more by the physicality of our being, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that. So not only is it happening on that level, but I think it's affecting our genetics as well. That's my point here.
Sure.
Our genes are being affected by these things, and we're doing an experiment on ourselves in a way. From this quick little divergence into walking and heel strike, I sometimes will say we're doing an experiment on ourselves, almost how little earth energy we can get into our bodies and still stay relatively healthy. And I
Sad.
think
True. Sad
we're
but
doing
true.
okay, but hardly.
Yeah.
There's reservoirs of health within us that we're born with, and that we eat, you know, some foods that are healthy. We walk around a bit, but we'd be much sturdier and better filled with life if we had these principles moving within us. So I make my
Sure.
case there a little bit, I
And
hope.
here's a question for you, and you're a chiropractor. So we're supposed to have a curve in our neck,
In our spine,
but
right? Yep.
in the spine, right? But up in the
Yes.
cervical area.
Yes.
And now they're seeing that it's starting to change to this
Well,
way
it's not
because
that
of
it's
the
starting.
constant,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's evolving that way now.
I would call it. It's not really involved. It's always been an issue.
Okay.
We always have known this lordosis, both the neck and the lower back are very important for spinal health. And losing it has always been an issue, and it's always can happen. And car accidents notoriously have injured them over the years, create problems.
Mhm.
A poor posture over the years, whether we were modern or not, could create troubles. But yeah, no, the point would be there's much more people, and younger that are losing that lordosis. And
Yes. Yes.
we call it forward head posture. And
Okay.
I'm on a mission, and I believe that Alzheimer's. I've created with something called the Four Element Institute here in Syracuse. My goal
Mhm.
is to do research on. I believe that this forward head posture that comes from not walking well with. So when you walk, let me add this, if I may, is heel strikes. So what I tell my patients is that bad posture, we collapse forward like that. Good posture, we know intuitively we bring ourselves back. And that's what the earth element is all about, is alignment toward that back side. The earth element side, so I've created something called four element yoga. And four element yoga is built upon this concept of each transverse side of our body, meaning the back side, the outside, the forward, and even the medial side, I call it, embodies one of these principles. So the back side is the earth element side. So good posture, that earth element side, the back side is doing its aligning job. Every transverse level of your body is meant to be drawn toward the back side. That even our arms are rooted to our shoulder blades in the back. So we always
Yep.
benefit, not just at the heel strike level when we walk, but as you're walking, bring your shoulder blades back, bring your elbows back a little bit more, bring your skull back a little bit more. And when you do that, your arms and other things, you're using muscles. And we want to use muscles. Muscles build robustness, self-empowerment,
Mhm.
things on that order. The
Make
muscular
it sturdy.
yeah, the muscular skeletal systems are very unified. They work very synergistically together. That it's the air-earth system, if you will, the muscular skeletal air-earth system. That forward head posture that we're doing more and more with computer work and our thumbs on our cell phones, that's causing epidemic losing of curve. And I believe, going on that, I was saying how I believe that Alzheimer's and brain issues are becoming more and more part of our culture, our civilization now, because so many more people are doing this forward head. And our brain, I like to say, is in a structure we can call the skull. And the skull,
Mhm.
is the earth element portion of this portion of us. And if it's not brought back, I think it's reasonable to assume it's not doing good for the brain. And what's interesting to note is that the the amyloid proteins, the Tau protein of Alzheimer's, the kind of telltale signs of Alzheimer's, are what were called tubulins that break down. They are called cytoskeletal tissues, skeletal, bone-like. Earth element, earth is skeletal. So my point here is that forward head posture is causing a breakdown in the earth element, not the bone. There's no bones inside the neural cells, but there's these cytoskeletal proteins that are getting damaged somehow. They don't quite figure it out how. I believe it's because of strained tissue not being brought back right over time with bad posture. So I wouldn't be surprised. My my bet, Susan, 10 years from now, they're going to find my bad postures has been found to be a leading cause of Alzheimer's. Who knows? But it could happen. I don't know
Yeah.
if
So
anybody's
that's
really
what
doing studies on
that's
that.
what I was saying. That's what you're going to be researching.
And so, yeah, I got to get funding for it, and I'm
Yeah.
preparing
Yeah.
for
For
that.
what you want to look at. I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm genetically at the increased risk with the ApoE for Alzheimer's. And everything is talking about how it's type 3 diabetes. But you bring up an interesting point. Is it just that?
It isn't
Why
just
has
that.
it, right? It's why has it become so much more prominent? We know there's the sugar and the crap and the saturated fats like that are just a junk that people
Yeah.
eat, the alcohol that's consumed now, the lack of exercise, so many different components that go into it. But what you're talking about is just another component that could play a part. And when you look at how we've really evolved with this posture, especially with the advent of this technology of these cell phones, if this always everywhere you look, I just came back on a flight on when the hell was it? Monday. It was a 9-hour delay. So I'm still coming off
Well,
of that.
so you were happy at your cell phone.
But as I stood, because I'm the observation, the constant scanning of the cop in me, but then I'm always looking at things genetically. And everywhere I looked, even couples standing there on the train, they're both down at the phones. Everybody was like this all the time, looking at when they're walking, when they're talking, everything, just this. And you look, and I catch myself with it, with the posture of, you need to stand up. And people say, I want to lose weight. Okay. You lose the look of 5 pounds if you actually stand up straight.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, don't we're compressing spine, we're compressing everything, and just more.
Yeah,
So
it's
I think it's
a
just another
sad situation we've gotten
component
ourselves in.
that you bring into that thought, and it's going
Yeah.
to make. What are we here for? We're creating awareness around all this. So for me, it's going to bring another level of awareness to me and how I'm carrying myself.
And I think in terms of resiliency, I work the concept of resiliency, and I think you probably are somewhat aware of what resiliency is from even epigenetic point of view. But resiliency is our ability to withstand our genetic imperfections, our constitutional weaknesses, whatever, past injuries, da. So resiliency is built upon having things work in our favor, building upon our strengths. If you have that genetic weakness toward Alzheimer's or whatever disease somebody might have, there's other things that can make you resilient. We all know that. It's a modern fact. Resiliency is a thing that's not an abstract concept. It's really there. So any way that you can understand how to become more resilient, and I believe,
Amen.
on here, what I'm trying to bring it forward is posture is a resilient building thing, that earth principle that draws things toward the backside. So all these four principles, these four elemental systems of our body, they all give us resiliency. But when we have a robust musculature, that gives us resiliency as well. We have more chi. Muscles do help us have posture. That muscular skeletal system does work synergistically together. Nutrition, and that water energy, the water system of the blood, and nutrition, and our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, our neurovascular system, that would be a fire water system. That works to give us real resiliency. But so many things give us resiliency, and we'd be wise if we wisened ourselves up to, finding ways, being smart enough to figure out what might help us to have that resiliency against the weaknesses that we might know we have.
Exactly. Genetics, probabilities and propensities. It's not absolutes. So when I found that out, stopped drinking, got off the high saturated fat diet I was doing, all the paleo and keto and all that crap. And you can turn things around. I say it's never too early, nor is it ever too late. And your principle of the resiliency, that's what it's about. The stronger you can make that mind, body, soul of you, if something does happen, you have a hell of a lot better chance
Absolutely.
of having a positive outcome than letting your body go to hell and then saying, oh my God, now I've got cancer. Now I'm going to die. Or I have heart disease running in my family. It's going to happen. Okay. Well, if that's what you resign yourself to, then resign yourself to that. You won't be very resilient regardless. So the more we can strengthen all of these different things within us, the better chance we have of, number one, making it inhospitable for anything to happen, and to dial down the genes that, and I've said this so many times on this program because I do DNA, is we all have some really good genes and we all have some crap. I got dealt a bonanza of crap, right? But I've learned how to work with it and make myself stronger mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that, like you're talking about. So I don't fear things happening because I know that my body is stronger. I was just with my boyfriend and he got sick this weekend. He was afraid to come near me. And I said, bring it. I'm not worried. I have complete faith in my immune system.
Well,
run down. I'm not worried about being near you because I just have faith in me. And guess what? Look at this. 2-3 days later, I'm rocking and rolling. Right. Got home, did my elderberry syrup, go to the gym, do all the things, get this good sleep. All of these things tie in to work with these 4 elements that you're talking about to create this resiliency in the body where you don't have to live in a state of fear of something happening to you.
Right.
Because that creates more stress, more fire,
more nervous system
fire.
Stress. Yeah.
More nervous system stress, which creates more issues. So let's get out of this fear mode. The more you understand how to work with yourself, how to embrace all of this, the better chance you have of having a better quality of life down the road, now and down the road, because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. So you can only be in this moment, but the stronger you make yourself and the more aware you are around all these things you're discussing, which are spot on.
Right.
There's the beauty.
And then there's, and food is, as much as I'm into the musculoskeletal system, I very much into nutrition and herbs for that matter. To me, you hear me talk about the 4 elements, and then nature didn't stop with the 4 elements. You have the 5 elements of the Chinese, and they have wood and metal. But my point here is that nature, when I use my different Chinese herbal formulations, I have things that are called like strengthen earth or something on that order. That what I tell them is different herbs have these. Nature is filled with these natural principles that came as the greater oneness, if you will. We're fractured into the thousands and hundreds of thousands of parts that nature is on this planet. And that's what makes nature on this planet so productive is there's all these ways that these principles have found ways of creating more principles. So in other words, they don't stop at 4. So in a way, fire and earth are the primal 2, and then think of water as more earth with less fire, and air is more earth, more fire with less earth, and then wood is, as a tertiary polarity of sorts, is more fire and water, and metal is air and earth. But anyhow, nature is filled with these principles that have commingled and created distinct biochemistries of life that are within each plant. And herbalists over the years, over the millennial, have found ways that different herbs have different assortments of principles that help us to plug up those weak spots within ourselves. So foods, I like to think in terms of what nutrition would be looking at food and the kind of parts of our diet in terms of balancing these principles within our diet. So certain things have more earth energies to it. The polyphenols, I believe, have a lot of earth energy to them, and even the way that they're built with these rings of flatness. Earth isn't a flat thing, so I almost believe in some metaphysical way, or that the flatness of polyphenols kind of put out fires. The anti-inflammatories, they like a flat rug would dampen out that
that's
fire.
the flame. Yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly what they do, but it works for me. And various other principles work in other ways, obviously. But vitamins, minerals are all embodied these principles that are put into biochemical form by nature, by life, by plants in particular. So once you see this, food becomes more interesting. Food as a balancing act of sorts. And food should be a balancing act. And I like this little story I'll share with you. Is when I was a kid, I remember my grandma Jenny would tell me I'd have all these cockaballies, she'd call them, that I would make, where I would put all these things together. Like on a hamburger, I would make it real layered with onions and tomatoes and a potato chip to make it crunchy, and pickles, and they call it a Dagwood sandwich, I think they called it back then.
Yeah, the Dagwood.
I didn't know who Dagwood was, but whatever. Something or another. So my point is, I was always into kind of balancing things. And I think that's what we're meant to do with food, is we're meant to balance these principles. I think I was aware of those principles, the sourness pickle principle, the crunchy potato chip principle, if you will. Now, these are principles that we balance whether we know it or not, but they're also balanced in the inner workings of different foods and the kale has, the cruciferous plants have a certain set of principles that are within their biochemistries. Different plants have various health positive biochemistries that are part of their principles. So I think it makes eating and nutrition more interesting when you see,
I agree.
in terms of these principles, that
Yeah.
seems how an herbalist works.
I agree 100%. In that platform I was telling you that I work with, the pH 360, it kicks out a food list that's unique to that person, and it's based on nutrient density to bring that body back into balance according to what it needs. And that's what the algorithm will bring out. And the interesting thing that you'll see, because everybody I start working with is calories, carbs, fat, protein, and these macros. And I go, I'm the anti-macro. Let's stop talking stop. Let's look at the nutrient density of what you're taking in your body.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, and mine included, when I pull up my profile, I look up at top, I think like basil's up there, cumin. And the first thing they look at and go, that's spices or herbs.
Yeah.
And then you click on it and you see all the reasons it's recommended for you. And I looked at one the other day that it was a long, and it might have been the cumin, but it was a long list on there of all the benefits it had for him. And people don't think of the herbs as nutrient beneficial, or they just think it's things that make shit taste good.
Right. In my book, I talk about the Umbelaceae family in particular, which is the cumin, celery seed, fennel seed. I suggest that everybody have this foursome of cumin, celery seed, caraway seed, and did I say cumin, celery?
Yes.
Fennel. I don't know.
Fennel.
Those four.
Fennel was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're nice foursome of spices that all have a certain their family, and they seem to be very good for us human beings to have.
Yeah.
Cumin is one of them that I think is very useful as well. Fennel is good as a sweetening kind of thing to put in. Celery I enjoy putting on eggs and things like that. Cumin is like my favorite on a lot of different. I like taking the seed. I just crumple in my between my thumb and my fingers.
Easy way to do it.
I love it I love it on cooked up mung beans with some oil on my plate.
Really?
The hot sauce, maybe, if you want. But
yeah, you could do that with any type of bean. I don't do much mung, but I've brought other ones. See, that was another thing, like the legumes. I was afraid for 12 years to go near legumes because they weren't paleo, right?
Oh, they're our friend.
What principles we look at. And I've had other people I work with that said, look, try them. Oh, I don't know. It's too many carbs. Like, get out of your head with the protein, fat, and carbs. Not everybody needs all of this all the time. Let's get the nutrient. Eat the damn rainbow. Look at the colors. They all represent different things.
Yes.
When you go to the store, look at the pretty colors and pick different ones. Right? Like, these are the things. And that's why I love what I do. It's about the nutrient density. Like you're saying, this is what creates resiliency in a body, not just, I'm going to eat. And oh my God, I have the carnivore people that are eating nothing. I have a woman that was eating nothing but butter and beef all day. taking a protein powder and putting it into heavy cream and eating that as a snack. And she wonders why she doesn't feel good. There's where this
She
stuff,
saw it on the
just
internet.
just saw it on the internet, right? All these different groups saying you should do this, you should do that. And so we are all so individual with what each of us needs. But I don't see anybody thriving for years on that. That's just me. So I'll get haters for that. And I really don't care. Bring it. But when I see people bring these things in, including myself, where I was afraid to eat certain things, it's not about fear. It's get the herbs, the spice, turmeric, the basil, oregano, all of these things have great properties, as well as, like you said, the veggies. When I started seeing chocolate come up on some profiles, including my own, like you said, polyphenols. So there's just so many different things to be able to look at when you open your mind out of what all the quote experts in society are saying is that it has protein, 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 or eat the really high fats, like someone doing 95% fat.
Yeah.
And they don't feel good. So what is your tune into the body? Because like you said, it tells us when something's off. We're not sleeping. We're
Right.
not socializing well. We're not thinking clearly. We're not performing well. And then we have like we talked about before we came on air, I said, nature therapy. Get out there, bring these things into your life. And you can do it in so many different ways, as you brought up today.
Yeah,
Whether
and
it's with,
it is hard these days for people to break out of where they've been conditioned to be and what they're using. We're all creatures of habit and routine,
yes,
and it to get my patients to do things I want them to do. I've discovered it's not an easy thing. People are they're in their rut, and you try to
out of flow.
inspire them, and I think that my I hope is that when people see things in higher level ways and things that get inspired, hopefully by seeing things in a higher level way and finding practical ways to apply it, and just walking with a little extra awareness. I'm a great proponent of spicing up your foods, your vegetables in particular, because that's the herbal way of approaching good health.
Yeah.
Is through spices, and find ones that speak to you and balance them in your meals. Feel like you're engaging something that is higher level, that's nature's embodiment of these things that you're meant to draw in. Find ways of just taking time to breathe more than you normally. Diaphragmatic breathing, simple things like these are just simple things that make sense. And in a lot of ways, it's never been easier with all the apps out there to know what you should do, and with all the foods that really are available to us. The irony of our time is we've never had such capacity to eat like the most healthy things we could imagine, but we screw up. Most of us screw it up, and most of it, I guess, is because we're ignorant of what really is meant to be.
Yeah. We just don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
So I'm on a mission to change that as best as I can with my book. I'll plug my book here real quick.
That's what I was going to say. Tell us about your book, because great conversation. Now tell us about your book so you can plug it. Go for it.
I'm proud of it. Actually, I'm splitting it. I'm in the process of revising it to 2 different books, but because I it's not that long to begin with. It's an ebook, but it's also a hard copy, 270 pages or so. And I talk about walking better, my form of nutrition, form of yoga. I'm into I have all these 4-element this and that, form of psychology, which is built upon astrology. And I still believe that astrology, even if you don't believe in astrology, I like to say it has a lot of insights. It can't help. And if you believe in a holistic universe and that this foursome really does play out in the human condition, it would make sense that the human, our way of living, our mind, whatever you want to call it, embodies these principles, and the ancients divided for 4 times 3 is 12. So each of the 4 elements have this embodied. I don't, like I say in the book, you don't have to believe in astrology to appreciate the concepts that it brings forth. We all have this earth, water, air, and fire principles embodied within our mental framework. And astrology helps you see them in the way that they show up in cardinal, fixed, immutable signs. That's another whole story. But my point in the book is I talk about how to even to raise your child, your children, with this concept of your goal as a parent is to make these 4 principles times 3, 12 within the astrology paradigm, to help your child become all they can be by helping them through this 4-element psychological way, and yourself for that matter. It's what we all have earth within us. We all have air as psychological parts of ourselves, spiritual parts, and we're meant to do this balancing act in ever more elegant, productive, even beautiful ways. All those things, beauty, health, vitality, all comes as these principles are put into more elegant ways. So in my book, I've applied that in lots of different ways, from the body structure to nutrition to specific things like walking that we do, exercising, or yoga I teach in there, and then the
Breathing.
Then the last thing I'd like to mention is I'm working right now on a phone app. I call it my holistic balance and fun journal app, something like that. And the goal is to help people to build a routine where they integrate these different activities. I have 8 activities, and each of these 4 elements can be categorized through. So your goal is to, with or without the app. In the book, there's a place where you can get a little hard copy of a chart to fill it in with these things.
Okay.
The point would be is to help reward yourself for doing these 8 activities, or as many as you can each day of each of these 4 elements. So there's 4 times 8, so there's 32 different activities that you go through each day or regularly, and give yourself I did that. So that's part of what the book is about, is to give people practical ideas or tools, as well as guide them with some insights, some strategies, things on that order.
Now, is it available? We're at Amazon bookstores. Where can you find it?
Actually, I have it just on my website. And that
On
would
the website? Okay.
There's a few different places where you get there. 4elementdoctor.com, FOUR, elementdoctor.com, or Dr. Walsdorf, DR, Walsdorf.com. You can find it. I do have a Patreon page. That's 4Element Doctor on Patreon. I have a YouTube channel, 4Element Doctor. You can have a TikTok presence.
You're all over the place.
I am, but I don't put enough energy into marketing.
Right? We need to be all over the place to get the word out.
What's that?
We need to be all over the place to get the word out with what we're doing, right? But we'll make sure that we have all of this information in the show notes so people can go in and find ways to contact you or get your book, and we'll have all that there. Cool. So what a fun, interesting conversation. And
well, thank you. I hope you got something. Hope your audience got something.
Absolutely. Well, you see the notes I've been taking.
Okay.
so I very much appreciated it. Yeah. And it's to learn something new. And I say, if you reach one person, you've done better than most people have in this world today. So that's what it's about. We're all out here. If we can make a difference in one person's life and improve their quality of life, their overall health, we've done it. So keep on keeping on. When you get part 2, or you just split up into the next one, come back on and we'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
But fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Again, we're going to have, it's Dr. Howard Waldorf. We will have all of his information in the show notes where you can look and get this book and check out his YouTube channel. I'll have a little
freebie there, or
sweet
available to. I might have maybe sometimes I'll give a certain number of books away, ebooks away. If maybe they'll have I don't know where. Can I have a link from your thing to a website page where they can download a book?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I might limit it to like 25 or so.
Yeah.
Look for a link to the book, the ebook.
Yeah, we'll make sure all that's put in there as well.
Very cool.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for joining me. Okay, everybody, get out there, be your most authentic selves, and make it a great day. Thanks for joining me, sir. All right, take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who would find the information useful. Also, if you could leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, it'll help the information get out to others. You can check out my podcast site and sign up for my newsletter for updates and upcoming shows, and that link is in the show notes below. And go make it a great day and let your authentic self shine.